is just, I mean, Joe, you know, what I've been trying to do since I retired is show, especially from my world, from the meathead world, show them all that, hey, dude, that was then, this is now. Like I did almost 25 years, but nobody teaches us how to be civilians because we're indoctrinated into a certain way of life.
Because that whole facade thing is so damaging, like you're saying.
Yeah. Well, that's why, like, you know, some of them got out in the 90s and they're still struggling. But yeah, I couldn't do that.
Yeah, and there's things that you do that I was like, I could never imagine myself in that position. I knowing what I went through in the summer, I was like, gosh, man, there's things that you guys went through that I only see the results of. And I'm like, man.
Well, you know, Joe, I think one of the big problems we have when it comes to transition too is there are not very many senior leaders that are out here leading by example now by just being themselves and not being that guy they were in the military.
Oh yeah.
You know, totally like agree. And it's especially combat vets can't get past the deployments. Like they can't let it go. And and I don't even know if I'm saying that right, but what I try to tell them is, dude, it's not about it's not about letting it go, but it's about understanding it. Yeah.
Reconfiguring it in your mind, reconfiguring it in your mind. It's like divorce. I met in Hawaii in 2016 before I was ever married. I met this lawyer mediator, family mediator for divorce. And his review that he wrote for my first book was, divorce is the second most traumatic thing you can ever experience in your life. And I kind of remember reading that going, really? I mean, I can think of things that are a lot more dramatic. And when I heard you guys talking about disengaging from the narrative of being all chummy and being affectionate and caring or loving, because that's brotherhood, that's sisterhood, that's family, and that's also existence between colleagues and peers who deeply care for one another and respect one another. And it's like with my ex-husband, I have to disengage. I care deeply, but it's going to hurt him if I care actively, right? So it's like it's kind of like that on that personal level that also just ties into professional, because our lives are so intrinsically bonded between the personal and the professional. How we are in our personal, like Lee practicing yoga suddenly, is going to affect his professional.
Yeah.
And how we are in our professional, we're going to take that shit home to our spouses. It's one big enmeshment. I felt more compassion for myself as I listened to you talking about trying not to be an asshole, but also going like faithfully, like with a good heart. Hey, I care deeply about you, and this is what you need to do.
Yeah.
Point blank. Yeah. No mushy gushy.
Well, I'll tell you, I learned, because you know I come from, you know, I'm a grunt, man. So I get shot at, I jump out of planes, you know, I'm all jacked up. But, you know, I went to combat in the invasion. I was a squad leader. And what combat taught me was, you know, there's room for stuff back at the fob or back at, you know, where you're in a secure place. Yeah, you can be buddy, do whatever. But when it's go time, it's go time. And if you're the senior leader, if you care about your troops, truly care about them, and a lot of leaders I've seen make the mistake because they do care, they take care of them too much, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah. So they become almost nurturing rather than protecting.
Well, they become overly dependent on you, which today's being overly dependent, not being autonomously minded, is so detrimental. You have someone you care about who's going to go like, well, I got to talk to someone before I figure out if I can do yay or nay on this. No,
you got to make a decision. And that's, I think, what's tough about me transitioning is that I approached when the first couple of years, when I approached everything was a life or death situation, urgency. So when I went into this field, I was trying to be as technically proficient as I can be, because to me, it was life or death. In a sense, I made a narrative that was life or death because I felt like if I can get a veteran into a home, it prevents the risk of, you know, the veteran suicide, and that everyone goes into. They have their own piece of America that they can be safe in and fight for and have something to fight for. And it became this weird, like, vindictive vendetta where the way I was communicating to people who are mostly civilians, it comes off very aggressive and abrasive in a sense. And it sounds like I'm a little overprotective in a sense, like a big brother kind of situation. And I was like, you don't know what you're doing, stuff like that. Like, and then I go off sometimes. And that's just how it was in the context of being in a metal can that's being sinking underwater. And I kind of brought that context because that's basically what I knew. And it just
because of the lack of mental decompression time.
But
well, that's what today's about, is instilling that opportunity that this is essential for exactly the reason that you just said. Mental decompression, right?
Yeah.
And with value in or out of the uniform, and then how to take a step back and go, what have I been identifying with? And hear your peers like you are right now. And Mac wants to speak too.
Yeah. Well, like I tell, it's take a tactical pause. Yeah. You have to,
so how did you do that, Mac? How did you do that? Was there a period where it was lacking when you first got out?
It was lacking for about the first year after I first got out. I didn't know how much anger, pain, guilt, all that stuff I had in me. And it was coming out to everybody around me. And I was, for lack of a better term, just a mean son of a bitch. And like, he's like, dude, don't lose Diane like I lost, like he lost his wife. And he's like, you need to freaking talk to somebody. And I'm like, what the fuck you talking about, man? He's like, dude, this ain't you. I'm like, I'm just, like what I tell guys now, in our world, I can ID the threat when it's coming.
Yeah, because you can see it.
It's and right then I can remove myself from that situation, so I don't treat people that way. Yeah, and when you get out, you're still in that mindset. So if you're not doing things for you when you get out, then ultimately you're failing the people around you.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the hard part for us to understand.
When I started therapy again, and I'll be honest, I started a little bit further out. I didn't realize I had an issue, and I was like, oh, okay.
I was wondering when you said it sounds so negatively judgmental that you were abrasive, and I know it's like a colloquial way to engage conversationally in the here and now, so it's effective and it's social to communicate, and because it lands. And then I heard it like 3 times, and I'm like, okay, but that's how people are perceiving you. So what was below? What was below the abrasiveness? What was it really for you? Not from the outside judgment. What was it for you? And don't answer it, but because we'll talk about it through the present, what he had sustained in the image of the eye of the world to order to function all those years, and then having that reprieve, that moment to just pause and say, okay, I no longer need to operate how I've been operating.
Yeah, I felt a lot better, obviously, the next day, and was able to kind of just rebuild from there, kind of start, all right, what do I need to do next?
Okay, this is what I'm looking at, and this is the challenges, and this is how do I want to reassemble these things so that my life works more in my favor, my vantage point works more in my favor, my perspectives.
A lot of the stuff that we deal with too when we get out is just what you were saying, Lee. It's self-inflicted because we're so, at least in my world, I was afraid that, because I'm the apex predator, I'm the CSM.
There's the expectation of that for yourself.
Yeah. And then all these guys see the sergeant majors going to therapy and shit. Like what, like I was afraid I would look weak, just like most guys. And ultimately, it helped me reconnect with my soldiers because I've been on a lot of combat deployments and I've seen a lot of guys get really messed up. And I didn't know how. There were a lot of guys that I hadn't talked to in years. And when I finally went through therapy, I mustered up the courage to hit some of them up. And then now, for the most part, I stay in contact with a shitload of my soldiers. And, and that's what I tell them. I'm like, now that's how you lead by example, is you show people.
Oh, yeah. Be vulnerable, be okay, be confident, and being vulnerable is what I'm learning.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we lose in the military that we don't really think about until we're out is, we are it kind of goes to the baseline that we are social creatures and we need human connection.
Yeah.
So
interrelationship of identities and practical application for American military service members.
We will learn a self-guided resource that can be accessed by all American transitioning military. Today, we learn to build an effective self-relationship to locate ourselves in difficult moments, to remember who we are and want to become moment to moment. This work is created with intent to reduce and/or stop possible self-harm and suicides. So this one's mine to read.
Yes, sir.
Military suicide statistics. A 2021 Brown University study estimated that 30,177 veterans of post 9/11 conflicts died by suicide. When compared to the 7,057 personnel killed in the conflicts, at least 4 times as many veterans died by suicide. And that is so true, and that number is probably higher.
Researchers say causes for self-harm and suicide include lower levels of education, loss.
Some challenges faced in service years, every single one of those is spot on.
Transitioning challenges, great levels of uncertainty.
It's also the relativity of pain versus the person. You know, as far as you've never seen what I've saw, but you've been through hell. And at the end of the day, if we're both going through PTS or whatever, the injury is the same, just the catalyst that caused it is different. So is this one for me to read?
Yes, sir.
All right. Transgressional identity. This identity association is the one that it's not just service, you know, like a lot of these veterans that are killing themselves had these problems before they came in.
And if you're going to take them in under your wing and let them do your work and your dirty work at that, then at least give a shit about rehabilitating them.
Yeah, get them
right. Be a better person, not just when they're serving. Or
well, that's that's and that's the hard part about transition too, is, you know, and that's what I'm trying to do, is rebuild community to get more guys to go out there. Like I tell them, you know, what we're doing with the meetings, go back and do it with guys you haven't talked to in a long time. Just bring them in. They'll be happy.
Make the problem obsolete. This is bullshit.
Yeah. Well, I've had 17 of my buddies and soldiers kill themselves over the years. So it's yeah.
How many are you aware of that your contributions to their lives have slowed that or completely reversed that inclination?
Well, I have one of he's like legitimately like my little brother. He tells everybody I saved his life, and it was by accident. I just called him out of the blue, hadn't talked to him in years. And he came. We the night before the race, we sit down and had dinner, just me and him, and he broke down and just told me that he's like, dude, I had the gun ready to go, and he's like, you just calling me just brought me out of a dark place. And then you know, I got him there. We did the race, and then I didn't let him go home.
He met himself in his truth, and you were that anchor.
In the pain and experiences that come along with that, you know, you may think you want to forget it now, but you don't. You know, you just want to be able to remember it on your terms. So like I said, you want to be able to ID the threat before it IDs you. And, you know, like I tell guys, you want to have the power to control yourself. And that's why I do the own your demons, don't let them own you, because you got the support
of the peer support. Yes. Yeah. I wrote down recently on this little sticky note that I have in my laundry room, we were given demons so that we can learn how to fly. Like, it's that reconfiguration in our minds of whatever we are encountering within ourselves at any given moment.
Yeah, of course, it is essential that we know which identity association it is that we're operating from, and why, in order for our lives to be best served, remember, no one identity association is better than the other. And that's true.
Like, yeah, that's it. Because it's like that, taking that shame away, that reconfiguration is crucial. Meeting ourselves like your friend did, being brave.
Yeah, well, like me, when I got out, you know, I didn't know who I was. I knew that I didn't want to be the typical command sergeant major that retires and works at range control and is an asshole and still wears his hair high and tight and all that shit, you know. But when I finally figured out that I have to learn who I am, not who Sergeant Major Mac was, but who Mac is. And like I said, that's a hard part for so many of us to get past that because we identify with it so much. And truthfully,
because you were told you were a sack of shit until you proved yourself. Now you get your stars and stripes and you put your outfit on. Now you're no longer a sack of shit, theoretically. Yeah. So when you don't take that time to pause and say, by the way, like we talked about in the beginning, I know we said things that, were to use to spur you to your greatness in uniform. However, let's all take a moment to realize that we said these things for a reason so that you may serve best and be alive where you're sitting in your seat now. Let's deconstruct some of the conditioning that we had to give you, because then there's value in who you are, right? Beyond that uniform.
Yep, 100%. One of the things that I struggled with, and I still do, and I've talked to it's all combat veterans, like who have seen like real combat. And so many of us have lost religion. But
the practice of it.
Yeah, the practice of religion is, it's like anything else. There's good and bad, and then there's, in
neutral ground.
Yeah, people are easily swayed. But what I tell guys, some guys find religion in combat, some lose it. What I've learned is that's okay as long as as long as you feel in your heart that you're where you need to be spiritually. Like
your godliness is love thy brother and sister.
Yeah, exactly.
That's your godliness. It's that love and that love force, and that actually
one's personal sense of agency. That's what I was talking about earlier about guys not being able to get past certain events.
You're doing the work. We're talking about this and humanizing ourselves amongst one another, so we keep bringing each other in check. Is the bonus around this work. So we have that.
We're not getting through this without love. As Bell Hooks says, it is easier to articulate the pain of love's absence than to describe its presence and meaning in our lives. Therefore, let us choose to create more built-in love in our lives through healthy self-recognition and learning to stay by our own sides. That's true. Like, that's it. You got to love yourself.
Well, and also why to banish the addiction to the victim story. So if I can describe love's absence more than love's impact, why is that my focus? So, and at the same time, as we get into later in the slide, how do we reconfigure that narrative in a way that best serves us today?
Yeah.
Is it my turn? You do it.
All right. Utilizing the I.A.M identity association model. Throughout both the earning of our lives' accomplishments and in the perceived absence of external validation or praise, the I.A.M is a self-applied tool. As we teach ourselves to practice the I.A.M, we further our self-initiative and increase the self-agency that we'll need throughout our lives. The I.A.M makes a greater self-relationship possible by fostering an interactive self where self-abandonment and giving up on ourselves is made less likely.
Fuck yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
let's sit with that for a second. What words stand out to you most?
Well, the self-abandonment.
Something I think we all have dealt and deal with when we're trying to, which identity association do you think fosters that the most? Probably.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's like if you still feel like you're expected to be this person, like nobody expects anything from you,
like a quasi badass. To me, being a badass is having the courage to do as you and your friends now do, which is, this is what I'm coming up upon within myself. Back me up.
Because you don't have, it's just like the old thing, you don't have to prove anything to anybody except for yourself.
Yes, I love it. You're such that's the true badassery.
Yeah, because that's what I tell people. I'm like, when you've been around real people and people who care about themselves enough to start fixing themselves, you can see it in their eyes, and you can see truth in somebody's eyes. Yeah. So
yeah, and that yeah, we talk about a version of the surface. What I remember about you and being in this interaction with you, it feels exactly like 4 years ago, where I get to curse, I get to speak simply, and it reminds me of the essence of why I started this work, because talking heads will do no good.
Yeah.
Being honest about our internal dynamics is the greatest beauty of this work. We see each other and we evolve, because without being honest about our personal selves, and this is why, Mac, being painstakingly honest. I'm going,
that there's 2 books out now about me and my guys when we were on my 4th deployment. And I told the first guy that wrote the book about the company was a Wall Street Journal reporter that was at our reunion.
Okay.
And
what's the name of the books?
That one is it's Bravo Company and Afghanistan deployment and its aftermath. And then the other one
and A.M in Afghanistan.
And it's
Afghanistan
and its aftermath.
What year was that?
It came out November of 2022. Telling some vignettes. Obviously, you couldn't tell the whole company's story. And then ultimately, like, the second chapter of the Bravo Company book is called Mac the Hard Ass.
And did people call you an asshole?
Not to my face, but yeah. We truly did care about him.
I bet you never falsely tried to embarrass anyone to their detriment, but only said words to encourage furthering of their ability to handle situations. That's the difference. You can yell at people. That's not the trademark of an asshole.
You have to understand how the individual, who they are, and how they're going to respond to certain things.
I mean, to me, it sounds like tough love, effective tough love.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, like I tell them, it's not personal, and it's all about the situation and the mission, not you as a person.
I use those internal strengths that I dammed up within myself, so that power was able to be released when I needed it to be released, when I needed the flood of that influence within myself. That's where it started. Absolutely. My dad was, he was like a drill sergeant at the dinner table all the time. We couldn't, there's a lot of rules, and I take my hat off to him, but it does make me, like Lee was saying, I need to realize and check myself, like, okay, people are people, and relax, because we had to sit at the edge of our seat. Your legs cannot be crossed at the dinner table. You better be sitting up straight, or you get a broomstick, and I've shared this before, in between your arms here, so that you can't do anything but sit up straight. Your elbows better be down, or the broomstick comes out. Well, you better say please and thank you with everything. So now I talk to people, and if someone isn't saying please and thank you to me, I feel run over. I feel like manners. I mean, thank God for my dad instilling manners and respect.